Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons.
Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video.
Hey there, Rulers. DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week with the New Frontiers format between myself on Tall Tales Atom, that is the Atom package with a ton of giants, versus John Miller, who is playing an Arthur list, kind of a starting Arthur list with Deus Ex Machina. So we're going to go ahead and see how these week 1 versions of these lists kind of fare. I'm going to be going on the draw with the Atom list, so let's see how it turns out. So the reason why I'm playing the Giants is because I thought it would be fun with Dark Alice to have this ability to play all 5 colors and use the discard effects of all the different Giants. I mean, you don't have to worry about cancel spells if none of your things are actually spells. They're all just being abilities. And that was kind of the idea behind it. Definitely not necessarily what you need to use for the top end of the deck, but it was what I wanted to kind of goof around with for week 1. John's going to take that first turn, hits a Waterstone. We see the Clockwork Girl. She'll have those 4 counters when she comes in. So he now has access to green off of his Waterstones. So I have access to 1 white stone. I'm going to burn the Energize here to cast Angel of Zeus. And the reason why we're doing that is because we want the white stone to potentially able to use 1 blue. We could have done it in the same turn, but ultimately we're kind of waiting to see what happens. And we wanted to potentially even have Dark Alice here to be able to set it up on turn to discard. But we wanted to either way going into our turn to have the best chance of having multicolor fixing for both times. So Arthur's going to come in with 6 counters. He's also going to call, I believe he calls one of the giants at this point, because he and I have talked about the deck before. Oh no, I think he actually called the 5-color Alice Zeus Incarnate so that I couldn't target her for the spot removal effect. So already hitting a pretty decent curve here, especially considering how he probably has maintenance in the rune deck. Choosing not to do anything during the upkeep, eventually just moving to my turn. The white stone, in that case, definitely seemed to be used for protection of the angels, and then using that white stone to cast Misty Woods. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But what it does is it lets me look at the top 4, grab a fairy tale, and put it in my hand, and then I can pay 2, tap, and sack it to bring a fairy tale that costs 6 or less from the graveyard back to the field. This is a really great way to use Dark Alice's discard effect to kind of put really strong cards in the graveyard and then revive them at instant speed very quickly. This can be the Kaguya or the Alice, or even saving another Dark Alice, which is very, very helpful. Seeing that 3rd Waterstone on John's side. Choosing not to use the effect of Arthur before the upkeep to draw cards, which I think is kind of a misplay. But then again, he also saw that I have that 1 will up. So maybe he was just worried about maybe something quick cast to kill it. Because again, remember that Arthur is always going to refill his +1/+1 counters at the beginning of every turn if your ruler is Arthur, which John is using. So looking like Lancelot would be a good play here, though it would tap him out. Potentially a setup into a different play here. He does have access to blue and green, so if he's got a Deus Ex Machina, that would be pretty effective. Pays 1 for a Vivian. And then it's going to... Oh, looks like here's going to come in the Deus Ex here. So the way this is going to work is because Deus Ex is like as this card enters, Vivian won't have a counter on it yet from seeing Deus Ex Machina enter to be able to remove counters. So John is going to have to decide how many counters to pull before Vivian will see that extra counter kind of come back into play. Looks like we're going to take 5 from the Arthur. We're going to take 3 from the Clockwork Girl. So 6, so suddenly that's just a 16. So we'll have the Flying and Eternal. And then he's also going to take the barrier counter to give it an extra 2 +1/+1 counters. So he'll be at a grand total of it'll be 18 +1/+1 counters, and then Vivian will see Deus Ex come in and gain a counter that way. So very, very large, very, very fast. Definitely something to be concerned about, especially since it has that Eternal and Flying. And, you could think of something like, he could have easily also used something like Maintenance beforehand, getting an extra 4 counters, which could have translated to an extra 8 counters on Deus Ex, suddenly putting Deus Ex in this position of, absolutely being a powerhouse. With Vivian on the field is a really big threat, because the idea being you swing in with Deus Ex, if there's no flyer, you die, or you take a ton of damage, and then you swing in with the Vivian, you can move all the counters to Vivian, tap down everything, and then still have enough damage to swing through with everything else for lethal. And it just gets you a lot of pressure very, very quickly. Flashing in Dark Alice, setting up the graveyard here. I do believe we see we see Atom go to grave. We are targeting. We do have, so now we're at all 5 colors, but we did also discard the Alice. So we're going to revive that, and then we're going to play from hand for 1 Light of Kuras. So this is the way this works is when it resolves, I discard cards from my hand, and then the total cost of all those cards is damage, and then I deal that damage as I see fit among any J/resonators that I see fit. It doesn't target, and then it's determined at resolution. So this is not necessarily the best play. Because he had burned all of those counters, it might have made more sense just to use the Atom Master Rune to be able to just remove Deus Ex from the game, Zeus's Grand Lightning, without him being able to respond, because you can't be chased. And then I would have stolen all those counters very, very quickly. But ultimately, we're choosing to try to use Light of Kuras in the hopes that maybe he tries to save a bunch of his stuff with Deus Ex, and then we just kill it anyway because they have so much in hand. Ultimately, though, choosing to just move a few counters to Vivian, or 1 counter to Vivian, so that we can tap down the Alice, and then at that point, we'll discard with Light of Kuras to kill everything else, leaving him with the Deus Ex Machina. And then the other cool thing about Light of Kuras is it replaces my hand. So that was the other thing about the Telltales list, was the idea that even if I have a handful of giants that I can't necessarily use in the moment, they are high-cost creatures that I can replace with Light of Kuras that also turn into a nice little board wipe. Going in the machine's turn, still has that massive Deus Ex Machina. I do have a flyer, thankfully, so I can at least stop the damage this turn, but it is still a very big threat. Down comes Lancelot, who's going to generate us some extra counters because I'm tapped out, so I can't possibly stop it. Now the problem here is Lancelot has plenty of counters to be able to burn to kill stuff, especially since he probably, once again, still has maintenance or board wipe. So there's the maintenance coming down, going up to 3. And then going up to a grand total of 21. So we're seeing a little bit of a misplay here. John's just going to go ahead and wipe the board. Ultimately, I think what probably should have happened first is swinging in with that Deus Ex Machina. If I block, he uses the Lancelot 3 to kill it, hit me for all of that maximum damage, and then wipe the board, but ultimately choosing to just wipe the board and then hit me for 11. Still not bad by any means, and still leaves him plenty of ways to use Lancelot to be able to kill stuff, as well as the fact that Lancelot now has enough to board wipe. Now, recognizing that I probably should have used his Grand Lightning before, I'm not going to miss the opportunity this time. We're going to go ahead and kill him. Get him off the board and stop Lancelot from being able to board wipe me again. Lancelot is still a problem, though, because he has the 3 counters, so he's potentially able to shoot anything that I play. So using Soul Resonance here to bring back the Dark Alice. It does have quick cast, but I again have to be really, really careful here because the Lancelot can just shoot it for 3 and immediately kill it. So I kind of have to accept that I'm kind of playing behind at this point. And so missing the Zeus's Grand Lightning at the beginning turned out to be a pretty big mishap. John looking at his hand here, and I go to ultimately again with water. We're probably going to see a rampant, like a mystery box eventually, so I am kind of at a disadvantage, especially since this deck does run the Kaguya Cancel spell. Kaguya Cancel doesn't really do much when he can just make it so that I can't chase. Down comes another Arthur. I once again think he calls the Alice card, because at this point in time I can't, Light of Kronos doesn't do anything, and Zeus's Grand Lightning has already been used. And a second Lancelot coming down here, which is certainly not good for me because, again, that puts him into very easy board wipe range, which puts me in a, once again, pretty bad position because Lancelot's ability to remove all abilities means that Eternal doesn't do anything. So he's going to swing in for 10, take me down to 19. And then at the end of the turn, because I have everything in the grave thanks to the Atom Resonator, I can flash in the Angel of Zeus. A little bit less of a threat to have to worry about him trying to reanimate or trying to kill, and it still gives me access to a second color. That's why we're kind of playing it in the deck. Getting this access to the blue also is really nice because we can still play the Misty Woods, which is also something that we want to be able to do. Misty Woods here, getting to go grab, we grab another Atom off of the search. I'm going to go ahead and immediately use the Alice, the reanimate here to bring out the Alice. The reason why is because she doesn't create a chase when she enters. That's one of the crazy things about her, is she does not use the chase, because she doesn't have an enter effect. So I retain priority when she gets revived, which means that now I get access to a Light of Kronos from Rune deck to potentially try to board wipe here, and it still only costs me 1 to cast because I have the Alice. So even if he tries to board wipe me, it means that it's easier for me to wipe his board, like I have to discard less. But also I just clear the board, like I reset the game. And that's really good considering how this takes another Arthur and 2 Lancelots off the board. So we're just doing math in terms of how many counters there are, so I know exactly how much I have to discard here for Light of Kuranos. And then still leaving one open, which again, I have that Dark Alice, and I have another Angel, I believe. So either way, kind of based on what John's going to do here, I have that one will to be able to quick cast something in to set up the dual color or 5-color element for my next turn. So seeing the scrapping build come down, only cost him 1, and we've definitely killed enough machines, so he's definitely going to get some value off of this. Regardless of what he hits here, I mean, even if it's a 1-drop, he paid 1 for a 1-drop, so that's not particularly bad. He is dealing with the fact that he doesn't have access to Return of God, which is another really powerful card. So unfortunately, we're seeing Garmhild, but he can't grab Garmhild because it's not a machine. He tries to go grab Garmhild. If this was Return of God, then yes, he could grab it. But playing Arthur means that he's cut off from these very cheap Return of Gods. Unfortunately, still hits a Lancelot, which is bad for me. That's Lancelot number 3. I definitely have to answer that, and it now means that we're probably going to be flashing in the Angel instead of Dark Alice, because we don't want to risk losing Dark Alice until it's, you know, safe. But it will be based on what he, you know, not having access to maintenance anymore means I'm a little bit safer. It really comes down to what other machines he's going to potentially play this turn. He has Garmhild, and then a Guinevere, who can put her 2 counters onto the Lancelot, which immediately means that I'm playing Angel of Zeus instead of Dark Alice. And then the Garmhild will produce 1 blue here for him to potentially be able to use this turn if he has access to anything. And then casting Diverse Evolution with his last remaining plus the 1 floating. So definitely not bringing in Dark Alice at this point, because thankfully it's not enough to get him to a full 10, because he only gets a maximum of 6 counters at that point, because he doesn't have enough Resonators to keep adding. But he had 5 types, which is really not good. So we're just going to flash in the Angel at the end here, another Misty Woods to keep digging, and be able to revive the Alice again and kind of keep the train going. Seeing a Kaguya off the Misty Woods, which is great because we saw our Windstone, so now we can cast that even if we don't hit the Dark Alice. And we are definitely at Rune 2, so it only costs us 2. We're going to go ahead and hard cast this Alice, because we want to leave potential will open. It has Eternal at this point, and we're just going to go into Lancelot. Which is a bit of a misplay on my part, because I'm not recognizing that he has 6+1/+1 counters, and I am only a 10/10. So I'm going to have to try to kind of recoup this pretty quickly here. He says, you know what, I'm not going to try to block. That's fine. So what we're going to do here is, because we have to, because of my misplay here, is flash in the Dark Alice now, when she can easily be killed. She will create a chase. Ultimately, though, just because she's on the field, regardless, I can float the will that I need, and while she's on the field, I have 5-color will, so that's really helpful. So I'll have to draw and discard and draw and discard, or draw and discard and draw and sack. Most likely going to be draw, double, discard. And then pay 1 to use a black to use Power of Immortality on the Dark Alice so that he gets an extra 4 attack because we want to be able to kill this Lancelot. Now, this is a big risk in burning this because something John could do here is he could shoot both the Dark Alice and the Angel of Zeus, kill them both, and then just sacrifice the Lancelot to the Guinevere to get her the extra tokens. However, that's not what John's doing. He's just going to go ahead and take the hit. So I get to gain 14 life, which is very, very nice. So a little bit of a misplay there on John's side. So down comes the mystery box, which we were expecting. So we see a Garmheld, 2 Jormungandrs, a 3rd Jormungandr, and a Machina. So he doesn't have very many counters on the board at this time. So Deus Ex is kind of weird here. So he could be a maximum of 6 counters, which is make him a 6/6, so not very good. The Yorms don't get any form of awakenings because so they're just vanilla 4/4s. And then another Garmheld. So the Garmheld is interesting because it sets him up to be able to potentially do a big play next turn with having so many resonators on the board. But this board state is not very large. John choosing to use all 3 of those counters to make Deus Ex as big as possible. And then ultimately, because of my board state and because of what he has and being tapped out, really not much he can do against me on this turn. Since I was tapped out, he chose not to awaken the mystery box, which is probably fine. I mean, he still hit 5 resonators. Which is still good, decent, but the problem is the value-wise kind of evened out. He essentially got 8 will worth of stuff for 7 will, which is not super great. So call another stone for Atom. Paying 3 here. Have another Alice from the hand. Going to try to kill the Yorm. Sorry, the guy who can produce will. Not that at this point it particularly matters, so actually instead we're going to go ahead and just go for Deus Ex, which again could have been banished for Guinevere, but choosing not to take advantage of that effect. So we are going to get to gain 10 life twice, so we go up to 53. So suddenly back in a much better position life total-wise. That's the crazy thing about Alice, is because she has that drain, you can just suddenly reestablish yourself pretty effectively if your opponent can't get you down fast enough. And then we'll just go ahead and swing in with the Angel of Zeus. We got 4 will open, we've got a Kaguya in hand, potential reviving of anything we need fairy tale-wise from the graveyard with Misty Woods, and still playing Kaguya, so feel pretty comfortable here, just saying pass the turn there, and letting our Angel of Zeus potentially get eaten. Playing a Guinevere off the top here. Choosing where he wants to put those counters, potentially on the other Guinevere. The one that can attack this turn. And then using I forget what his name is, to ramp. to then play, and the one floating from playing a guy, and to play a mystery box from her hand, and then discarding it so I can't chase it, so I can't cancel that with a Kaguya. And seeing right off the bat a Camelot, which is really great. It can't hit either of the Dark Alice or the Alices because they have Eternal, but other than that, it's still going to be able to blow some stuff up. So hitting another Garmheld, another Yorm, a Diverse Evolution, which will do nothing, and then another Mystery Box, which will do nothing. So the Camelot's going to attempt to target the two floaters, and we're just going to go ahead and do double protection of the Angels, protecting them both and making them very big for the turn. We were considering saving those in case he sacrifices a stone to make his Yorms be able to remove stuff from the game, but ultimately we want to keep our floating will alive as much as possible. And at this point now we have a Dark Alice who can block a Yorm pretty effectively, which would be great because we can do a lot of spot removal. Just going to go ahead and attempt to use Excalibur from the Rune deck. And at that point in time, we're going to flash in Kaguya and cancel that with her Enter effect. So John has currently got 3 open will and no cards in hand, so everything on the board. He could choose to sacrifice stones to make his Yorms that can attack, potentially be able to eat stuff, remove them from game. Choosing not to, just choosing to pass the turn though. And so you're going to notice something interesting. There are 5 Resonators on my board, and there are 6 stones currently. So we're going to go ahead and use Chance of Tranquility here as we move in with the 1 green stone because I control Kaguya, and we're going to control my graveyard. We're going to put a bunch of cards back, leaving myself with only 5 cards in my graveyard, including the atoms because we want to be able to produce any will. This will also ramp us a stone, talking about kind of how it works in terms of the graveyard recycling and everything else, trying to pick which cards I'm going to try to save and kind of what order I might want to put them in at the bottom of the deck. Have that order established. We'll go ahead. I think I chose not to ramp the stone. Yeah, I chose not to ramp because I'm at exactly 7 stones, so you can choose up to. So we're at exactly 7 stones. We're not calling stone yet. We have exactly 5 Resonators on board, 7 stones, and 5 cards engraved. Kaguya now has flying. But the problem is we have Camelot that's in our way. So we have to kill that Camelot. So Alice number 1 is going to swing into it. He doesn't have any other flyers, so that's going to get killed, or 10 damage. I get to heal that 10. Swing the other 10 into it, go up to 73. At that point in time, the Camelot will die. He no longer has a flyer. And then Kaguya will be able to swing in. Kaguya swings in the air for 7. We'll take him down to 29. And at that point in time, because of her extra effect, will trigger. I will get to recover up to 7 stones, draw 7 cards. So in response to that, we're just going to float 6 white will. We could float any color will that we wanted because of Dark Alice, but we're choosing to just ultimately float 6 white. And then all of the stones that I controlled are going to recover. And I'm going to get to draw 7 cards. See, I left the Misty Woods in the grave because I don't have any way to bring additions back, and at this point in time it feels a little bit unnecessary. So just the triple Atom and the Misties. Pay 1. Flash, doing another Chance of Tranquility. We're going to bounce both of my Alices back to my hand. ramp a stone into play tapped, and I'm not going to do anything with my graveyard. Use a blue and 2 floating, a blue and 2 floating, so down to 2 floating total to have 2 Dark Alices, which will swing in the air for 20. Take them down to 9, gave me 2,000 more, up to 9,300. Paying 1, flashing in a Dark Alice. Dark Alice is going to draw me a card and sacrifice a Alice. And then I would need to do that again. We failed to execute that properly here. You have to do it twice. And then at that point, I use the 2 last floating, revive the Alice again, and then she just swings in the air for lethal. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to our game 2. As we go into the next game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so you're notified when all of our videos goes live. And consider supporting the channel by being a member here on YouTube or by checking it out on Patreon for all the cool exclusive perks that come with supporting us. Thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next game. John choosing to put me on the draw yet again. Vivian on turn 1, nothing on my turn 1, Arthur down on turn 2. And then choosing to swing in with the Vivian there. I believe he chose Zeus's Grand Lightning off of the Arthur for this time because he didn't want to get it to remove. Flashing in the Dark Alice at the end of the turn, discarding, I believe, a Kaguya there. And then on the second draw, we saw the Atom. So that's really, really good. So now we're going into our turn 2 with 3 will, and all of our stones are of any color. So with that, we can play this Misty Woods, which lets us potentially bring back, I believe we discard the Alice, actually. And so now Misty Woods' effect is very interesting, the tap effect, because it doesn't require any specific color. It's just 2 void, so it sets us up really nicely for if he tries to kill our Dark Alice. Ultimately drawing a Cogni Misty. Before the draw, he's going to draw a couple extra cards with Arthur here and then recover all of those counters. Hitting another Waterstone off the top. Seeing a Clockwork Girl here, and then who counts as a machine, so Vivian will see that, and then down comes the Deus Ex. Don't have a cancel for it. I could have discarded a Kaguya potentially and canceled the Deus Ex, but ultimately choosing not to. This time kind of recognizing that I probably just have a better play by reanimating at the end of this turn, going into my turn, and then like burning the Energize and then being able to do Zeus's Grand Lightning and Light of Kuranos, potentially, to just completely wipe John's board and leave him staring down a Dark Alice and an Alice that has all of the effects. So Deus Ex Machina is absolutely gigantic, but doesn't have swiftness, and that taps him out, so he can't do anything else this turn. He's going to move some extra counters, though, to the Vivian, because the Vivian can swing this turn, so there's really no reason to not. At least take advantage of it while you can. So it's going to swing in here in the air for a grand total of 8. In response to the swing, so like the attack is going to happen as we move into declare blocker step. So I'm going to let the declare attacker step go through. I'm going to go ahead and revive in Alice. Once again, she doesn't use the chase when she enters, so the card effect resolves, we go in, and the next action that has to be taken is choosing a blocker because the chase isn't happening, and so I'm going to go block. I'm going to go ahead and block. So I get to choose to do that block because there's no chase created by Alice entering, and so there's no like window where he can use Vivian, and declaring block rests the resonator, so there's no opportunity for him to rest Alice in response to the block so that she can't block the Vivian. And Alice has the flying, so she has 10 she's a 10/10 with flying, drain, eternal, swiftness, first strike, and a lot of other crazy stuff. The only thing that, like, we're just essentially going to bounce off each other at this point. So John would have to burn more counters to make it so that at least Vivian doesn't die here. But regardless, I'm going to gain 1,000 life and not take the damage. So we're just going to bounce off each other here. I gain the 1,000 damage, go up to 46. And then at that point in time, I believe John has to pass the turn. So it goes to me. Nothing during recovery here. Calling a stone. I start to go to cast Grand Light of Kuras, and then I go, wait a minute, I got to do this the right way here. Zeus's Grand Lightning first. To then remove the Deus Ex and all of his counters from the game, so that Light of Kuras is much faster to cast. I could have also, so I did this a little bit backwards as well, to prevent myself from getting damage, unfortunately. I could have attempted to move to combat, swung in the air with Light Alice, so that I could get the damage and the life gain, and then cast Light of Kuras. Currently, that would have been really awesome, but because of the way I'm executing it, he's going to get to a chance in response to Kuras to burn counters to tap down Alice. So it stops him from getting damage, but it also means I have to discard less with Kuras to board wipe him, which is kind of a fair trade-off in my opinion. Especially considering, once again, I have that dark... I don't lose Dark Alice. I don't lose Zeus, Alice, Zeus Incarnate, which puts me in a very good position for whatever John plays the next turn. John's turn, hitting that 4th Waterstone, staring down a pretty heavy board. Having to figure out exactly how he's going to want to deal with it. Paying 4 to awaken a Jormungandr with both of it. So we'll have a Gluttony and a Growth counter. So it is now a 9/9, and the next time it attacks, it can sacrifice the Gluttony counter to remove a creature from the game, which gets around Eternal. This is very important to recognize. But it doesn't stop anything in the air, because it can't fly. So I do get to swing in with Alice. We're going to do that first thing, and just hit him for the 10, and take him down to 50, and then gain 10 myself. So 56 to 30 at this point. So he's going to attempt to swing at me for 9. Going to use the Gluttony counter here to try to remove my Alice. In response, we're going to flash in a Dark Alice and sacrifice the Alice so it doesn't get removed from game and it sits in grave. Have another draw, another discard. Figuring out exactly what I want to discard here. I believe I discard an Angel of Zeus. And I'm just going to take the damage. I say that's fine. Take it down to 9. So I'll actually go down to 47. Paying 2 here to play out that Arthur. Trying to choose what card he wants to grab here. There's not a ton that targets at this point, so I believe he's thinking about just targeting, calling the Alice, just in case I revive it and then have this like spot removal, pay 5 removed from game effect. So we'll have those 6/1/1 counters. Paying 1 to go ahead and cast Scrap and Build here. And in response to that, we're going to go ahead and flash in Kaguya so that we're just going to cancel it. He still has to remove from game all of those machines, which at this point in time, they were just going to sit in grave anyway. But it is going to stop him from getting a potential high-value card like a Lancelot, because it definitely felt like if he had a Lancelot there, he probably would have just played it. So now he's only at 2 will, so he can't play a Lancelot, which makes me very, very safe for whatever I want to do on my turn. Because Arthur by himself is not really doing much at this point. So at that point in time, he's just going to pass. And in response to that pass, we're going to go ahead and cast that Chance of Tranquility during the end phase, thanks to Dark Alice and controlling Kaguya. We're going to control my grave, ramp a stone, and not bounce any resonators. Those 5 cards in the grave, ramp my stone, draw for turn. Gonna go ahead and recover at this point. I have 3 resonators on board, calling a stone here, going up to a total of 6 stones. Paying 1 to play another Dark Alice. I do have to draw and discard some here, which is going to mess up my graveyard a little bit more. But again, as you saw before, I have that Chance of Tranquility in my graveyard. Seeing another Giant. Paying 3 for a for the Zeus Alice. This puts us at 5 resonators and 6 stones. So we're going to go ahead and cast the Chance of Tranquility from the rune deck to restack up everything as we need it to be. Set up the graveyard, ramp up into 7 stones. And leave us with 5 cards in grave, so 5, 7, 5. Swing at him for 7, chooses not to block, goes down to 23. And at that point in time, we're going to trigger, get to recover all these stones with a floating white, and draw 7 cards. Still haven't called stone, mind you, because we just used Chance of Tranquility to do all that stuff. Using the 1 floating and 4, we're going to go ahead and cast the Atom Master Rune Traveler. So we're going to look at the top 3 and put some cards into the play. We see an Urugrat, big black giant, and another Alice Saint. So we're going to use his effect to destroy the Arthur. I'll lose 400 life. John has to discard a card. And then that's how that works. So with the big old giant, when he enters the play, he's also just a gigantic creature. And then we'll swing in with Alice, swing in with Alice, and then swing in with the Dark Alices, and at that point in time, John knows that he can't win, so he's going to go ahead and scoop it up. So that is it for the week. Let me know what you guys thought on the match down below. Deck lists for both lists will be up later this week, as well as a little bit of discussion on both of them. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying, class dismissed.